everyone. So I just was setting up a little bit to try to make some sort of dinner kind of or snack, but I just wanted to give you an idea of what something like that might look like. So what I'm going to do is make hash browns with some toppings basically. And I wanted to talk a little bit about this concept of mise en place, which is French, but basically it means put in place. So it's where you get sort of all of the ingredients together and you put them in front of you and you just try to like pull from there. So one of the things that I have here is I guess it's sort of like a salsa or like a pico de gallo, a very, very watery pico de gallo. I can try to show you some other time maybe about how to make it, but basically it's, let's see if I can pull this. It's cut up tomatoes and onion and salt and minced garlic and a lot of vinegar, and then you just maybe a little bit of water and you put it in the fridge over the night. The longer it sits, the better it tastes, and then you just use a spoon to guess eat it later. What I like to do actually is I like to drain it. So I'll get something like this metal spoon, and you just go in like this, and then you sort of pull it towards you at the bowl so it can drain down some of the vinegariness, and then get pieces that you can just sort of put on top of whatever. It's pretty versatile. So there's that, and then there's also this avocado. So the avocado is actually like these little mini avocados from Trader Joe's. I don't know if you can see that, but I think they're pretty great. They come in like this sort of netted bag, and they're near all the other produce, and you get a few different ones. They're mini size. They're not the normal size of avocado, but I think they're actually pretty great because you can they're perfect for like one person. You know, sometimes you get a really big avocado, it tastes great, but it's too big to eat in one setting, and this is not too big for one person in one setting. So you could still split it with somebody else if you wanted to, but personally I wouldn't, but that's an option. So yes, herbs that are in containers I think are pretty nice because it's great if they're in a, if you can grow them like on a windowsill, but I think when you're on a really cheap budget and you just don't have a lot of funds or resources, they're a great way that you can sort of change up the flavor of a lot of different things that you have going on, make it a little bit more versatile so you don't feel so sick and tired of the same food. So I think it's a nice thing to have around. You just have to be careful for certain ones. Like I like basil, but basil can turn bad really quickly in the fridge, so just kind of be mindful of what you're using. But yeah. The hash browns I'm making are just sort of generic ones that I found at Trader Joe's. They come in a package like this, and they're in the freezer section. I think they're like maybe a couple of dollars. You could get it cheaper if you went to the dollar store. But in general, I think Trader Joe's is a pretty well-priced grocery store option. You can also check Aldi if you happen to live near an Aldi. Anything that you can do to try to save a bit of money in your food budget or other things is helpful because you can use it elsewhere. I'm going to take a moment to talk a little bit about this, which is my air fryer. I was very lucky and fortunate in that I received it as a gift from a family member, and I'm very thankful for it. It comes with this little dish on top, the model that I happen to have. It's a Emerald Lagasse one, and I've actually had the chance to go to one of his restaurants a long time ago, and it was amazing. Highly recommend it. But I also highly recommend this particular air fryer. If you've never used an air fryer before, I'm trying to think of how to best characterize. I would say it's sort of like a convection oven. So it's kind of like a toaster oven. The best feature about it is the fact that it has, what do you call this? It has a timer on it. I'm trying to make this a little bit sharper. Yes. So it has a timer on it, and you basically just turn the button. It's kind of a little bit raised here, and you turn it to whatever the timer is, and then it clicks backwards, it counts down, and then and the green light means that it is turned on, and the orange light means it's at temperature, and up here is where you adjust the temperature. So say, like, I don't know, a lot of times potatoes are at 450. This happens to just be at, I don't know what this is, like maybe 350. I don't know. I always turn it down a bit, like not to whatever it kind of, whatever recipe might say. It's you know, less than 450, sure. And then I kind of just tend to turn it, like, usually just somewhere down here, somewhere up here, and then eventually it goes all the way around and turns off. So I really like this because of the timer feature, because it makes it less likely that, you know, if you walk away and you forget that you're cooking something, it's still going to be, the timer's going to eventually turn itself off, and then it'll power down even though it's plugged into the wall. I think that's a really great safety feature, because you know, cooking is an issue because you don't want to accidentally walk away and then forget that you're cooking something. So if you're there, you're watching, and you've got a TBI as well, I would definitely recommend getting something that's like this, and this particular model I think is pretty great. So anyway, you pull it out. What I did was I just threw the hash browns in. I threw 2 hash browns in, and it comes in like this, like there's this secondary container. I'll try to put this model, I'll try to see if I can find it on Amazon, and if so, I'll put a link to it in the comments below. But this particular model has, I think, this extra compartment. It actually is sort of like, I'm trying to think of how I would call it. I would say it's sort of like a pail. Like, see how you can pull this up? I just don't have a lot of counter space, so I'm not going to pull it up, and it's hot right now. But basically you just throw whatever you want to cook in here, and it makes it crispy. I think technically the rules or the recipe will say, yeah, you can throw some oil on the bottom if you wanted to, but I personally don't. I just throw whatever's in. Usually it's already frozen, maybe it's not, and it makes it crispy. So I like texture differences, and I like crunchy things and crispy things, so I think this is actually kind of nice. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is just sort of take out the hash browns and put it onto a plate, because they're crispy and crunchy like that. And then we can just close this up. Also, you can press this button down. I'm not going to do it right now because this is still pretty hot. And then you can take out the pieces and throw it in the sink, and you can wash it basically anyway, the same way that you would wash any type of pan normally. And then for avocado, I just like to use like a butter knife and a spoon. And so you rinse off the avocado in the water, and then you know, just cut through and you split it open, and then you get your plate of food, which is the hash browns, and you just, you know, scoop out the avocado, which I think is really tasty. It's a good healthy fat of the choices. I find that when I get avocado from Trader Joe's, just because of the environment of where I live right now, it'll ripen. It'll take like maybe a day and a half to 2 days of just sort of hanging on a rack to ripen, which isn't bad. Then you need to like start eating them. You can discard this and or keep your avocado pit if you want to try to grow avocado indoors, and or if you're warm enough, if you live in a climate that's warm enough, you could actually plant it outside. I tried it I think a couple years ago, which was nice, but I live in a pretty cold climate right now, and so that just wasn't something that worked out super well for me, but that's okay. It takes actually a couple of years, I don't know if you know that, when you plant an avocado seed, it takes a few years for it to just start to really grow and then to make to fruit if it's going to, and it probably takes, I would say, at least 5 years, so it's kind of a bit of a commitment, but I think they're tasty and they're good. So on top of the avocado, I'm going to add in some of the salsa, or sort of the super very rustic Pico de Gallo-ish type flavors they made. This is quite, I think it's a nice mixture. The nice thing about when you make it at home is that you can really have a say over what ingredients you might like. I would recommend probably not putting cilantro into this. You could put cilantro on top, but I wouldn't necessarily put it right into the salsa unless you know for sure you're going to eat it right away, because you just don't want it to go bad, or I guess maybe if you made it really super acidic with the vinegar, then maybe it might be okay, but it's something that I personally would just probably add later instead of keeping it submerged in here. And you know, I sort of just top this up and add more things to it, so just kind of keep food safety in mind. Also, this is from, it says Pyrex on it. This happens to be the 4-cup container. One of my speech therapists, some of the things that comes up a lot is, you know, you find yourself in the wrong geographic location, you need to figure out about food. I'm trying to sort of use more glassware in general and less plastic, but you know, you do what you can. But so I actually got this. It's a nice pattern. I think it's pretty. It's very functional. It is heavy though, so this actually does work a little bit better just when I'm actually at home. But it's glassware. I'm not concerned that like anything's gonna break down on the inside like that when I'm putting in something highly acidic like vinegars in here. So, and it has like this nice, I guess the top is probably plastic or something that's like it. So it seals pretty well. You know, you still don't want to turn it upside down like in your fridge or anything like that, but I'll try to put a link to it also below. It was something that I was able to find at Target, which it was nice. So I'm glad my speech therapist had sort of suggested maybe some reusable containers to just kind of have. So this is, I think, a pretty big size for one person if you're going to put a meal in it. Maybe if you had something that was, I don't know, really bulky, like a very loose leaf salad. But otherwise, this is probably maybe the equivalent of like 2 really big lunches or something like that at this particular size. But they have this pattern, they have other ones, and it's a wide variety of sizes, and the brand name is Pyrex, so I think it's pretty quality, so I would recommend it. Okay, so the next things I'm going to put on now are going to be some of the different, I guess, herby things. So I just took out, not the paper towel, but a bunch of parsley. There's 2 different kinds of parsley, I think. There's flat parsley and there's curly parsley, and the parsley that I have happens to be Italian flat leaf parsley. I think it's pretty nice. It actually goes really well on top of hummus, and I will probably, you know, try to make a video about that sometime later, not right now. I think it's probably one of the easier plant-based recipes that just once you make it from scratch at home, I like store-bought hummus too, but I think it's kind of a little bit hard to go back to once you actually are able to make it at home at a relatively affordable price point. There's that. So anyway, the way that I pulled off the parsley is technically not the way that people recommend you pull off parsley. Technically they recommend turning it upside down and hitting it with a knife, but it's good enough for what it is, and I'm just gonna tear it a little bit into just tiny little pieces, which is kind of making a little bit of a mess on the counter, but that's okay. And then you just sort of, you know, put it on top of your food. This is also a good place where if you didn't have hash browns, if you happen to have like maybe like a baked potato, that might be an option, or baked sweet potato is another option. This is mint. Mint is something that I think is used quite a bit in a lot of Middle Eastern cooking, but it's also used elsewhere. I think it's used a lot in the South too with, I guess when people make mint juleps or mojitos or something. To me, for a long time, or mint chocolate. For a long time, I just was not a fan of mint, and I'm still not as huge of a fan of it, but I've grown accustomed to actually liking it, and I think it just adds like, I don't know, a minty flavor, but it's actually kind of nice on dishes like this, because there's just like this element of freshness, which makes it feel a little bit special, especially when you're eating at home and you're trying to do what you can to save money, and but you still want to eat well and feel like that you're making some nice choices that work well for, I don't know, your diet or whatever it is that you're eating. But yeah, so this is what dill looks like. I'm not sure if you've ever cooked or used it before. This is also something else I hadn't used as much. So I learned about how to make pickles from a friend, or different types of pickles that weren't necessarily cucumber-based pickles, just like pickling vegetables. But anyway, dill is something that's often used in certain types of pickled vegetables, usually not fresh dill, usually dried. But I think it's also something that's really nice if you ever make like ranch dressing or other types of things. I think that's also a nice place for where you can use dill. So I want to also talk about a couple of different sort of bagged items that you can find at Trader Joe's, which I think are pretty great. Trader Joe's in general, I feel like, has a really good price point when it comes to seeds and nuts. So these are in sort of some IKEA Ziploc bags, but this one in particular, so this is an example. It says unsalted, dry, toasted, slivered almonds. I'm not allergic to these, which is nice. They kind of come like this, and it's just a nice way that you can add some protein to your meals in a pretty shelf-stable, inexpensive way. So I just kind of store them upright in these bags. They come out much bigger normally. This one happens to be raw sunflower seeds. Depending on the type of nut or seed, the price point is different, but I would say in general they're all roughly a couple dollars each, maybe, depending. So if your grocery store doesn't have a bulk aisle, which I do recommend checking out because that's usually a pretty expensive place and or a farmer's market, check out Trader Joe's section for their prepackaged stuff. And this one is Trader Joe's raw shelled hemp seeds, and it says just the hemp hearts. And it's got omega-3s, omega-6s, which aren't as great for you, but and then also like a bunch of protein. It says 10 grams of protein per serving, and a serving is a pretty big size. It's 3 tablespoons or 30 grams. So I think this is also nice. Omega fatty acids, in particular omega-3s, but you also need some omega-6s. This is kind of what it looks like. It looks a little bit like Parmesan, or the consistency of it, like if you were making a pesto. So it's very grainy, but I think it's kind of nice. Yes, omega-3s in particular are good for brain health. You could try throwing this into a smoothie. I don't know how that would taste to me. I just think that it works really well on top of a salad and or on top of a bagel. If I were making actual homemade pesto from scratch, which doesn't need to be traditional pesto in terms of basil and pine nuts, you can use other types of things. Usually when I make pesto, I actually tend to use these, the dry slivered almonds. So it just depends on, you know, what you would like. So there are actually a couple of seasonings I wanted to talk about too, which I think are nice. One is this Goya adobo seasoning. You don't have to have this particular one. I would say you want to use any of these adobos in moderation because it's mostly salt, like flavored salt, not completely, but garlic salt. This particular one with the red cover means I think it has pepper in it, which is why it says with pepper. But I also use the blue one sometimes, which is without pepper, and just add my own pepper. I think there's also a green one. So sometimes I'll sprinkle a little on, in particular if I were just having plain avocado, I think it tastes pretty great. I try not to use too much because, like I said, it's very salty, but it's a very nice all-purpose seasoning. And then also, I don't know about you, but on top, I have these labels that I was able to create, and it's just a post-it note with like a piece of tape, and a family member actually created these for me, and it's wonderful because when you have a bunch of seasonings and they're all stored upright and you're cooking, you don't want to have to keep picking up all of them to see which one you want. So this is actually a really nice tip that I'd recommend. But yeah, so this is a nice all-purpose one if I'm making anything that has sort of a Spanish style and or Mediterranean style influence to it. Something where I've got mostly avocado. I'll think about trying to squeeze some lemon on top, especially if I'm not eating it right away, but I usually do eat it right away, and I would sprinkle a little bit of this on top. This one also I really like. It is by Rachel Ray, and it is a drizzle reduction with balsamic vinegar of Modena. It comes in a size like this. It's not super huge, but basically it's reduced balsamic vinegar. So it comes out kind of like as a drizzle glaze, and I think it's kind of, yes, it's fancy, but it's also, it just tastes nice. You can just put a little bit on top of whatever you're making, be it pasta or other types of things. So you can also use it on top of like maybe eggs, bagel, anything that seems very brunchy or brunch-tastic, I think is great. Some of the tomatoes that I use, it really depends, but I also really like these Trader Joe's mini tomatoes. They're a good size, you can cut them up, and sometimes I make the Pico de Gallo that way with those. But this is also a really good place too if you had any type of loose leaf lettuce, like a muscalin, romaine, arugula. You could throw it on top, put other things on, and it looks pretty great. So here basically we've got like a nice dinner. You could also use maybe canned beans that have already been cooked down, that you've rinsed out in water. Like I said, potatoes, pasta, any of those things. Oh, two other things I really wanted to talk about too are this from Trader Joe's, which is the vegan kale, cashew, and basil pesto. This is quite tasty. It is a pretty plain flavor. So if you're somebody who doesn't like spice, this is a good option. And it just comes in a container like this. And let me just switch this over. And then you just sort of peel it back, and then you take the pieces out. It's really good. I tried to make pesto potatoes the other day, and it was delicious. So if you don't have time, or food processor or other things like that where you want to get rid of a bunch of fresh herbs or lettuces to make your own pesto, or kale, you can do it also with kale. I've done it with kale. I really like it that way, which I guess makes sense because this has kale in it now I think about it. This is a good option. In general, I try to follow mostly whole foods, plant-based diet. Basically anything that says vegan. Not anything, because I do have some allergies and sensitivities, but when you're out and about, I think a good strategy is try to think about vegan food, because vegan food does not necessarily need to be refrigerated. So it's shelf stable, it's room temperature stable, especially if you're using whole food, plant-based foods versus things that have been pretty processed. So from a food safety perspective, I think that's a really nice thing to sort of keep in mind when you're trying to think about, okay, what are the foods or snacks or things that I can have when even if I think I'm going to be home to eat lunch, but you know, things happen, your schedule changes, and all of a sudden you need to have food. Having vegan food on hand, I think is a good strategy. So if you choose to eat different food at other times, like maybe when you're home or near a fridge, then you know, that's your choice. But my recommendation definitely would be try to stick to plant-based foods, just because it's more portable, it's easier, you don't need to think about a refrigerator or a microwave or anything like that. You're still going to be okay. I think it's probably one of the biggest draws. It's not the only draw, but I think it's a huge benefit for when you're thinking about dietary concerns. So especially if you know, you have a TBI, you want to minimize the amount of cognitive thinking that you need to do, or decision making on things that matter but not matter in terms of functionality and how you do for the rest of the day. And you don't want to exhaust yourself trying to think about where am I going to store my lunch, or how am I going to reheat it, or anything like that. So I also wanted to really highlight this. This is Trader Joe's zhoug sauce. And zhoug is it's a topping that's popular, I guess, in Yemen. It has roots there, so that's why it says a very spicy green herbal sauce with Yemeni roots, and it's vegan. So I don't know if any of you have ever tried chimichurri sauce. I would say that's probably the closest to what this is. So the ingredients are down at the bottom, and they are cilantro, canola oil, jalapeno pepper, chili flake, garlic, cardamom, sea salt, cumin seed. This is such an amazing ingredient. I love it. It's probably one of my most favorite things at Trader Joe's. It's amazing on top of hummus. You can stir it into soups, and it'll make things, or broths, and it'll make it spicy. You can, this is how it comes in the package, like this tiny little tab that you just pull up. I don't know if I can show that a little better. I mean, it's a the generic tag. It's plastic, it's thin. It's great on top of hummus, it's great on top of potatoes, it's great on top of salad. Where else do I use it? I've used it in soups, I've used it in sandwiches, just so many different things. And a little goes a long way. You don't need a whole lot. I'd recommend just getting like a little bit. Like that's probably a lot for somebody who doesn't really like it, but I like it. You can put on top of a bagel to make a savory bagel. It's wonderful. So it's just got this wonderful all-purpose like spice seasoning, and it's I've never tasted anything else that's like it, and I think it's amazing. You find it in the refrigerator section at Trader Joe's. Both of these usually sit near each other. I've noticed sometimes, oh, it's really spicy. Make sure you have water. I've noticed sometimes that they're a little bit different, like the consistency in terms of like how spicy is this zhoug. Can vary sometimes batch to batch, but on the whole it's pretty good. I would say just err on the side of getting just a little bit while you try it out and see if you like it. It lasts for a while. You can also freeze it and just break off little pieces later. Like freeze it like maybe in like a Ziploc bag or something like that, some other type of reusable container, or just straight up in this, and then you take it out when you want. You can make sometimes I've made like these nacho things, which maybe I could try to show you some other time, where I take like a non-dairy rice and bean burrito, take the filling out, put it on top of something like a sweet potato fry, and then I add toppings like these plus this, and it feels like you're eating nachos and chips with like all this stuff on it, but instead, which I guess, you know, flavor profile wise, seasonings wise, it is kind of like that, but it's not actual nachos and chips. It's kind of like a healthier version of things. So I think that's also like a nice riff for something that's not too complicated but still tastes really good, and that you can make at home. So there you have it, and this is what the final dish looks like. I think it's pretty good. So we've got the frozen hash browns that were cooked in the Emerald Lagasse air fryer with the timer clock that auto turns itself off, combined with some of the tomatoey pico de gallo, some avocado, some raw sunflower seeds, and dry toasted almonds, and some hemp hearts for omega-3 fatty acids, and then some parsley, mint, dill, a little bit of adobo seed. So yes, there you have it. The actual dish. I think it looks pretty nice, and I hope you like it. So if you enjoyed this video or content like it and whatnot, please actually click on the red subscribe button at the bottom. There's also a bell notification that you can click, and it'll turn gray and let you know anytime I post new videos. And then also please go to the left side over here and click the thumbs up button to like the video, so that it helps the YouTube algorithm, so that other people can get to know about this content, and maybe you can help them too. And then also, as I mentioned before, I'll list in the description box below links to items that I've used, if I can find them online, so that you can purchase them as well, and maybe they might help you. Okay, I think that's it for right now. I'm going to eat my dinner, and I hope you have a really nice evening. Okay, thanks.